Hey, welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes a news story pops up and you kind of think, okay, what's really going on there?
Yeah, you need more than just the headline.
Exactly. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to dive into this recent agreement down in Texas. It's between the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, and Dallas ISD.
Right, and it's all about transgender athletes participating in girls' sports.
We've got some info here, and we're just going to try and break it down, make sense of the agreement itself, the state law behind it, all the pieces.
Keep it straightforward, no jargon.
That's the plan. Just a clear look at what's happening based on what we've seen.
Sounds good. Think of it as us sorting through the details, pulling out the key stuff.
Right.
Because it touches on sports, schools, the law.
Mm-hmm.
It can seem a bit tangled.
For sure. So our mission here, just clarify what this agreement means, the context of the Texas laws, different perspectives maybe, but without taking sides, obviously. Just lay out the info.
Exactly. Help you kind of grasp the main points of this situation in Texas.
All right, so let's start with the agreement itself, the core of it. What did Dallas ISD and Attorney General Paxton actually agree on?
Well, the main thing, the central point, is that Dallas ISD basically agreed to ensure that transgender students aren't participating on girls' sports teams.
Okay.
The AG's office announced it, and they really framed it as upholding Texas law. Protecting girls' sports was the phrasing used.
And it sounds like Paxton was looking beyond just Dallas ISD, too. He had a message for other districts.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He specifically urged all the other public school districts in Texas to make sure they're also following the state law on this.
Okay.
And he mentioned that his office plans to, hold schools accountable if they believe they aren't complying. So it looks like this Dallas agreement might be sort of a signal to others.
Right, setting a precedent, maybe. Now, you mentioned upholding the law. This agreement didn't just, happen overnight, did it? There was an investigation first.
That's right. The agreement came after an investigation by Paxton's office into Dallas ISD.
And why were they investigating? What kicked that off?
It was because of allegations that the district might have been violating state law, specifically by allegedly allowing transgender teen athletes to compete on girls' teams.
So someone raised concerns, basically.
Exactly. Concerns were raised, and that prompted the AG's office to take a closer look.
Were there specific things they were looking into? I think I saw something about them asking for documents from Dallas and Irving ISD, too.
Yes, that was back in February. Paxton's office requested a bunch of documents from both districts.
Okay.
And that request came after these reports surfaced. Allegations involving district officials, filmed separately, apparently suggesting ways around the law.
Suggesting ways around the law. How?
Well, the claim was that these officials suggested to parents that a trans student could play girls' sports if the student's birth certificate was changed to, say, female.
Ah, okay. That sounds like a specific loophole attempt, maybe?
That seems to be what the AG's office was investigating, yeah.
Yeah.
That these claims were a key factor.
And was there a particular person at Dallas ISD tied to these allegations?
Yeah, the AG's office focused on Mahogany Gaston. She was the LGBT youth program coordinator for Dallas ISD at the time.
Okay. And what exactly was she accused of saying or doing?
According to the AG's office, there's footage where she allegedly told a parent, yes, a trans student could play on a girls' team if the birth certificate was changed.
Wow.
And it's also alleged, she said, the district finds the loopholes in everything, even suggesting, reportedly, a willingness to potentially defy the Texas law.
Those are pretty serious things to allege. And what happened with Ms. Exeston? Is she still with the district?
Well, according to the Attorney General's office, she resigned from her job at Dallas ISD while this investigation was going on.
Okay. And did Dallas ISD say anything about this? About the resignation or the allegations?
Based on the information we have, Dallas ISD didn't put out an immediate public comment on it at the time.
Okay. So this whole situation, the investigation, the agreement, it's all tied back to specific Texas laws, isn't it?
Absolutely. You can't really understand this without looking at the laws in the books there.
So what's the main law we need to know about?
The key one is called the Save Women's Sports Act. Governor Greg Abbott signed that one back in October 2021.
Right. Save Women's Sports Act. What does it actually do? Who does it apply to?
It specifically targets K through 12 schools, kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay.
And it basically bans transgender women and girls from playing on school sports teams that align with their gender identity.
So how do they determine who plays on which team then?
The law says athletes have to compete based on their biological sex. And it defines that, or clarifies it as the sex correctly stated on their birth certificate.
Correctly stated on the birth certificate.
Okay.
So it's tying sports participation directly to the sex assigned at birth, as recorded initially.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the framework for K-12.
And didn't this get expanded recently? I feel like I saw something about college sports, too. June 2023.
You're right, yeah, good catch. In June 2023, Texas passed another law that extended basically the same rules to collegiate sports.
Ah, okay. So the same restrictions competing based on the sex on the birth certificate now apply in Texas colleges, too.
Exactly. It broadened the scope significantly from just K-12.
Now, that birth certificate piece seems really, really critical, especially with the allegations against the Dallas ISD coordinator mentioning changing it. How does the law handle that if someone does change their birth certificate?
Yeah, that's a really important detail. The law actually addresses that specifically.
How so?
It defines the sex for sports eligibility purposes as what was, quote, entered on or near the time of the student's birth.
On or near the time of birth. Okay.
And it says the only changes to a birth certificate it recognizes for this purpose are ones made to fix a clerical error, like a typo made when it was originally issued.
I see. So it's designed to prevent someone from changing their birth certificate later to reflect their gender identity and then using that changed certificate to play on the team aligning with that identity.
That seems to be exactly the intent, based on the wording. The law is written to default back to the original birth record, unless there was a clear mistake right at the start.
So let me just make sure I'm getting this right. Even if a transgender student in Texas goes through the whole legal process, gets their birth certificate updated to reflect their gender identity, under these laws, that updated certificate wouldn't allow them to play on, say, the girls' team if they were assigned male at birth.
According to the structure of these Texas laws, that appears to be correct. The determining factor remains the sex recorded at or near birth, with that very narrow exception for clerical errors.
Okay, wow. So let's just try and pull this all together then.
Yeah, let's summarize.
We have this agreement, Ken Paxton, the AG, and Dallas ISD. The core is Dallas ISD confirms they'll follow state law, meaning no trans girls on girls' sports teams.
Right, and that agreement came out of an investigation.
An investigation sparked by allegations that Dallas ISD personnel were potentially looking for or advising on ways around the state law, like changing birth certificates.
And the backdrop for all of this is the Texas Save Women's Sports Act from 2021.
Which applies to K-12.
And the later law from 2023 expanding similar rules to college sports.
And both laws basically tie sports eligibility to the sex listed on the original birth certificate, recorded at or near birth. Later changes don't count, except for fixing initial errors.
You got it. That's pretty much the sequence.
Yeah.
The laws set the stage, allegations prompted the investigation, and the investigation led to this specific agreement with Dallas ISD, along with a warning to other districts.
That really clarifies the chain of events and the legal context. It's a lot clearer now how these pieces fit together.
Yeah, it's a good example of how state-level laws are really shaping these policies on the ground in schools and universities.
It really is. And this whole situation in Texas, it kind of highlights these really complex ongoing debates, doesn't it? About, sex, gender identity, fairness, inclusion, especially in sports.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These aren't simple questions, and different places are approaching them very differently.
It makes you think, When you look beyond Texas, or maybe at different levels of sport, like you go from high school to college to pro, what other things do you think start to come into play? What other factors weigh in when people are trying to figure these things out?
That's a really interesting question to leave people with. You start thinking about things like competitive balance, different physiological factors maybe, inclusion policies at different organizational levels. It definitely gets more complex.